Hi, I hope you really enjoyed developing your drawing skills, looking at the work of Jim Dine that we were previously looking at in the art lesson. Today we're going to do some more development skills. Following on from the last project, we are now going to concentrate on developing your drawing skills by adding lots more detail and shading. So what I want you to do is draw a grid, or create a grid like the one I've got here, using the 4 cm by 4 cm squares. Then start carefully with a sharp pencil to draw the outline of each square. Work on this until you have a whole outline of the shoe. So let's start the project. Ideally, you'd be using a HB pencil, okay, which is quite hard and it'll give you a really fine line. I'm going to be using a 3B pencil so it shows up better for the video. Okay, now I'm left-handed, so I'm going to start in this corner here so I can come across the drawing, and hopefully you'll see this image here transposed, that means copied, across into this side of the work. And I'm going to work carefully across from right to left, okay, and picking up on the details. So I'm just going to give myself a little reference point to start with. Quite often people starting a drawing, particularly something as highly detailed as this, they get really overwhelmed. But if you break it down into simple shapes, okay, so what we're going to do is just isolate this square here, or rectangle in this case, and develop it and bring it across. So I'm just going to start with a basic outline shape here and try to replicate it into that area. So I'm looking at that sort of measurement from there to there, and kind of just bringing it in across to there, and then coming down, and then working out where the lace, from that point there, how the lace comes over to this area. So it's got a little curve in it, so I need to come down a little bit more, bring my curve in. Okay, I'm sure you'll have a lot more time to be able to really perfect this. Again, in our toolbox we're using a ruler to have created your grid, or a straight edge. Ideally you want these, you could guess at it, but try to use the ruler and the measurements on it to get a really accurate grid. Rubber is going to be really important. You're very likely to make some mistakes and a few errors when you step back, but you can carefully rub it out. Again, because using a HB pencil, it's very light, you're not pressing too hard, so it's very easy to remove your lines. We call these construction lines because basically it's giving us that initial outline, what we need. Okay, so again, this line continues down, which is the edge, the very edge of the training shoe. Look to where it finishes, so it finishes kind of around here. Okay, we've got a shadow here of the shoe, so I'm going to bring in, I want this part of the lace to come in. Okay, so you can bring this one down, and again it's observational drawing, so as Kerry said before, and something that we talk about in art all the time, for observational drawing, only draw only what you see. Okay, so a lot of people try to imagine what the shape would be look like, and then when they step back and look at the picture, they look at the drawing, they realise that some errors have happened, took place. And if you get off to a good start with it, with the drawing, you'll find that the first bit will influence the second bit as well as keeping you motivated as well to continue to draw. But again, it's not about giving up, because you've got this little gadget here called a rubber, so you can use that to just correct anything that you want to do. Okay, bringing that in. And again, here's the other part of the lace, comes right across this centre bit. Okay. So you could start to be looking at the basic outline, but particularly think about the details later. So again, in art and in life, nothing's, there's the straight lines, but there's also curves as well. And it's trying to get those convincing curves that help you work, particularly in this case, to look quite realistic. So I've made a little mistake there, so I realised that this is too far across. So I'm just going to bring that in a little closer. And again, get my rubber and just remove that line. So again, one thing I've missed out here is this piece of the lace that curves round. Kind of comes from across and then drops and curves back again. A little gap there at the edge, just here. And as part of the GCSE examination, you know, for your portfolio submission, and maybe it may become part of your final submission, that you might have chosen this. It might be a fashion project, it might be something that you've done textiles, but again, these would be supported. This would support your portfolio with some really nice fine drawings. You can see here where the line of the edge of the trainer with two different pieces of material they meet, so it's, you know, some people might just do it as a straight line, but if you follow the shape of it, it curves back on itself. Okay, you can do faint lines just to get the idea of that, and then put your other lines over the top and rub out your construction lines that lie beneath. So I'm bringing in, these are the eyelets that the laces pass through, so you can see the curving shape of them. Try to copy exactly what you see. Again, it's trying to bring in that idea that it's a really accurate drawing. This is what you'd be assessed with. Again, this pen craftsmanship and pen drawing skills, the details and things can be added later. So it's about proportion as well, of the gaps between certain objects, how things relate to each other when things cross over the top, and you can see here that idea, our eyes recognise that this is in front of that because there's a shadow that's being cast. But again, at this stage, it's just about getting that basic outline shape, and then we can work on the rest. So here is the edge of the training shoe, and again, this is where it gets a little difficult because this is a very dark area. So I'm trying to draw what I think is there now, because it's not a very clear edge. This is where the other piece of the training shoe, and the other training shoe is actually butted up to it. So I'm going to use a bit of creative license there and imagine that bit is the end of the shoe itself, just to give this defined edge. If this was photography, this would be classed as a real close-up photograph, and again, this could inspire you to then think about having some photography in your portfolio of close-ups of textures and details, almost like microscopic details. The further you can go in, it just plays tricks on how we imagine things. Things look much different. Things always look different when they're photographed anyway. Real life looks totally different when things are photographed. One famous photographer, I forgot his name, but he was asked, why do you take photographs? And he said, because I want to see what the world looks like when it is photographed, because it always gives different interpretation. So again, I'm carefully working things out. If you've moved from one area, if you're developing this area, and then you come back, don't rush. You start to work out again. Just orientate yourself. That means look again and try and plot exactly where you are, because it's very, very difficult to jump back into that spot. So you need to get your bearings, if you like. So I'm looking again at this shape. This is a bit difficult because the real photograph here is out of focus anyway, so it's hard for us to get that defined edge. So this is the lace where it's actually curved over like it does, because it's basically, they're like ribbons, aren't they, that just fold and just follow their own shape. They follow their own curves. So it's trying to make that look as convincing as possible. Again, looking at where a start point is and where a finish point is, and think about that as a journey. From there, you start area to your finish area, but don't just treat it as a straight line, as a diagonal in this case. Look then at the intricacy. So the line goes in, so it's concaved, and then it's convex, which means it bends out, and then you can bring this line down. It doesn't go right to the edge, but again, for some reason, the material on these trainers, because they're not new ones, they're old and battered, and they probably conform to like the shape of the person's foot, the wearer's foot. So that gives you an impression that it's like an old, gnarled trainer. Okay, so I did mention the photographer who made that famous comment, I want to see the world, what it looks like when it's photographed. And that was an American photographer called Gary Winogrand, who's sadly no longer with us. But if you ever get a chance to see some of his photographs of America in the 1960s and 1970s, they're really fantastic. They're a big inspiration to me. And again, as a photographer, often photographers have thought that it's as far away from drawing as it can be, but actually photographers are looking at lines and how a picture's composed, and that's one of the most interesting things that often draws people in to liking a photograph. So all the time you're looking at a drawing, your eyes are being directed, your eyes are trying to make some sort of sense, certainly on something like this, where when you initially look at it, you can just see this complex, massive shapes. We know instantly what it is, but had we gone in any closer, our brains try to make sense of the world around them, and we're relying on these shapes and lines, shadows, texture to inform us. So here's my lace going across the top and coming into that area. In fact, I'm going to rub those little lines out because they can't be seen. They are there, but the lace is going over the top. And of course obliterating and hiding what we see. So I'm just going to take that line because it's a little bit wider. Right across the bridge of the foot, drops into the next rectangle, and you can see it goes thinner there. As the lace comes through, it gets pinched into that tight little hole, so it's really, really reduced in size. Create this semicircle shape around the eyelet, and then this is the metal reinforcement around the edge of the eye hole for the trainer. If you're looking at this picture, I'll ask you a question. What do you think the material is made out of? Is it leather? Is it plastic? Well, you can see the textures in it, these little ridges, that it's made out of some sort of material, like very, very thick cotton material, like canvas. Very, very hard wearing. And again, once you start looking at the total detail of this, you can start convincing your viewer that you know what it's made out of, because you can follow these little lines and ridges. Again, these are really important, the stitching, because they have a direction as well. Okay, they're all the same size because they're made by a machine. And again, they're totally directing our eyes all the time, and we're making some sort of sense of moving around the page. Where the eyelets, we're looking at tone now, the tonal values. So we spoke about that with the Jim Dine drawings. He was interested in the negative space, but what we're looking at again is this tonal value, where tone means from dark to light or light to dark. So we can see here around this eyelet shape here, you have a very, very dark black where there's no light able to get in there. So of course it's very, very dark. And again, this gives you a chance to maybe perfect that shape just by a little bit of shading. You could reduce things down in size. Again, I'm using a 3B pencil here, so it's very soft. It's giving me these very, very dark shadow areas. And again, it's that thing about the harder you press, the darker the colour. So you can modulate or change that to create very, very light areas by drawing lines closer together. If we keep them further apart, we get one tone, but if you bring the lines closer together, you get a darker area. Again, if you look at the pattern, there's like a zigzag patterning going on here. We can create that sort of effect just looking at it. So what I'm going to do now is go over the work in a darker pen. I'm quite happy with that shape now. It's almost exactly like it. I'm sure that if you could cut one out and put it over the top of the other and shine light through, you'd be very, very close to the original drawing. I'm going to go over it now with my darker pen just to bring out these really dark lines and possibly add a little bit of cross hatching. So I'm using a fine liner pen with a really nice point on it, because I'm really happy with my drawing now. I could have used pencil shading, but I want to use darker pen. I can see a mistake here, that this line that I brought in is much too big, and that line, if you look at the angle of it, the angle of that lace compared to that one, I should have brought the lace down a little bit more. Because I've not drew it in pencil yet, I could get my ruler and just keep that angle in. So it's almost like a maths lesson, this. You can slide that across, look at that point, bring your construction line in, and I realised that I've come far too far. Okay, so clearly I've got some lines to rub out now. To get rid of that one, because that one go around the back of here. So I'm satisfied with that now, so I'm going to work on the centre part of my drawing now and reinstate these lines now, but in black. And as a composition, that means how the overall picture looks, because there's this big cross in the middle. It's just by chance you've got this big cross that the laces have created here. And I don't know about you, but my eye seems to be drawn right into the middle of the picture where this cross is. So that's might have been a decision when the photographer was taking this photograph.